speaker, Mike Coleman, who is the founder of Aid to Hospitals Worldwide, and he's got some very interesting tales to tell. Please show you what was in the usual way.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members, and ladies and gentlemen. I've actually been a Rotarian myself for just under a year, and prior to me joining Rotary, I was awarded the honour of your got the name? Paul Harris. Paul Harris. I started to look at what Rotary was doing, and I was absolutely amazed at what you people have achieved over the years. I also visited 49 clubs now, so I figure I know quite a lot about Rotary. And over the 49 clubs, I've seen many different achievements. Can I first say, you ought to give yourself a round of applause for doing that, because you've been a phenomenal impact to the world health already yourselves. And if you can do that, do it. You hide yourself, in my opinion, far too much, because what you're doing is a worldwide phenomenon. Aid to Hospitals Worldwide was started about 12 years ago in total. I work for a charity called Tools of the Mission. It's a Christian-based charity, and I'm a Christian, so don't hold that against me. As far as I'm concerned, what we're doing and how we do it, we couldn't do without being part of a church operation. And saying that, we actually send to every faith and creed throughout the world with our organisation. When I was working with Tools of the Mission, the aim and objective was to actually collect as many tools from people that have died, from people that are donating tools, refreshing their toolkits, etc. And then 60 people of a certain age at Ipswich did nothing but reassemble them into toolkits. That could be carpentry, it could be light engineering, electrical, mechanical, even sowing seeds in the fields. And during the time I worked with them, I was amazed at what their impact was in the world. They worked in predominantly India, Africa and Asia. And their aim and objective was give them a toolkit, or all of them, train them how to use them, give them the supplies they need to start their little business, micro business, and then watch them go and work in the village and feed their families. That worked very well, and it still does. Whilst I was there, I was made a regional supplier for the Ipswich district. And we got asked on a regular basis for medical equipment and medical supplies, such as bandages, dressings, cannulas, needles, and things of that nature. Could not get them from any hospital that I knew, or any surgery, because of health and safety. Then followed something that was quite phenomenal. I went into the Westford Hospital to see a friend of mine that was dying in the hospice. As I turned the corner to go to Macmillan Way and bury St Edmunds, I saw a lorry lowering on a piece of equipment which said scrap all down the side, and the piece of equipment was in fact a complete X-ray unit for a full body. And to me it looked brand new, it really did. I had to stop. I really wanted to find out why this equipment was being scrapped in this way. And I asked a couple of questions to the driver. Basically I said, was it working? He said it was up to half an hour ago. What have they done? Why have they done it? He said put 2 scanners in it, in the unit where it's gone, which is progress. Of course you have to do that. And why are you taking it away? He said, I'm going to scrap it and I'll make a lot of money out of it. Now I was beside myself with rage at the amount of people I found out that were dying from lack of care in India, Africa and Asia alone. These people were dying for lack of equipment, a lack of proper care. Even a single bed to go in, they had mats on the floor, and the cross-contamination was phenomenal. So then started a quest by myself, knocking on doors in the hospital. And I must say, I made a payment on myself in that hospital. I actually knocked on 29 doors of managers within that one hospital over a 3-month period. And everywhere I went, great idea, friend, love to be part of it, but can't because the hospital says health and safety. It causes problems with health and safety. I had health and safety over there. I was really fed up with it. And I finally got a call from the CEO who said to me, well, he didn't say, his secretary said, would you come in at a certain time? I thought, cracked it. Must be there. So I went to the CEO, and as I got through the door, this guy laid into me. And he called me quite a few names, which are not repeatable. He said, you wasted my staff's time, you wasted my time, and I'm telling you, you're not having it because of health and safety. But at that time, I was up to there. I was beyond that. And I laid into him back and said, if I walk out of this room, I walk straight to a national newspaper and tell them what you're doing. He calmed down, and so did I. 10 minutes later, we were talking about why this hadn't happened before and why health and safety was restricting the movement of equipment. I understood that you have to be safe with equipment, especially X-ray machines and things of that nature, which are causing major problems, sharps, instruments, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, he told me that just a year previous to me going in there, he'd given something to a so-called charity. You know, he held his hands up and said, we donated this item. He went out to India, and about 5 months ago we were sued for a loss of money because somebody got hurt with that equipment. He said, I will never ever put myself in that kind of jeopardy again, and I won't allow it to happen to my hospital because the public purse has got to be protected. Now, I really understood that, and I really why the guy was getting really upset. But as you get a bit older, you get a bit wiser, I think. And I said to him, what about a legal disclaimer, a disclaimer that would mean that the minute you passed over the product to us and we left your gates, then that product would be owned by the charity. We've been going 47 years. We know what we're doing with equipment. He said it might work. It might work. So 3 weeks later, I walked in with a piece of, well, a document that would have choked an elephant. The solicitors really did a good job. Everything was protected from their side. The product belonged to us wholly and fully when we took it from their hospital. And he passed it over to his legal department. And about 2 weeks later, he said, Mike, you can take anything you want out of these hospitals. Out of the West Suffolk, the Sudbury Hospital, and the Newmarket Hospital, I took 60 tonnes of medical equipment in the first year. That equipment was brought back to the base at Ipswich. It was cleaned, processed, pat tested, and checked by a technician to make sure it was viable. And we sent it abroad. Things went so well that about 6 months into the operation, the CEO of that charity, Bill Dewhurst, called me in and said, Mike, this has taken off. So much so that we can't give you any more space. I'm going to let you go, he said. He said, I'm going to ask you to form your own charity. And this was 9.5 years ago. Form your own charity, get your own premises, and substantially help the people that can't help themselves. By the way, I'm not going to give you any money. I'm not going to give you any warehouse space. I'm not going to give you any help. Apart from, you can use our letterhead for 6 months before you establish your own charity. To say at that time I was a bit weary and not knowing where I was going would have been an understatement. But over the next 6 months, money came in to form that charity. and that was called Aid to Hospitals Worldwide. The aim and objective was very simple: to help those of every faith and creed that couldn't help themselves. We were not interested in private hospitals, we were not interested in large organisations within these countries that were getting a lot of money from overseas organisations like DEFRA. We were only interested in people that had got nothing, and there were many, many hundreds of these hospitals around the world. Then we had a tsunami in India, and the Salvation Army asked us, we've got a hospital in Nagarkot in India which has been flattened by the tsunami. Several people had died. The hospital itself was inoperable, you couldn't do anything there at all, it was contaminated. But the World Health Organization had bought them a piece of land and given them a prefabricated hospital. But what they hadn't given them, because they're a Christian-based organisation, they hadn't given them any equipment. And the Salvation Army said to me basically, can you help me? So that started another quest where we got 20 hospitals by now involved with us. We put all the things together that they could and gave it to us, and we set about doing all the testing of the equipment, etc. And 2 40-foot containers later, we sent off those 2 44s. What I want to tell you about is one. The first 40-foot container was the critical care equipment: defibrillators, heart monitors, blood pressure machines, some beds, some operating equipment, anesthesia and things of that nature, and some minor surgery equipment as well. But in that unit I got 2 defibrillators ready, and the defibrillator, as you know, is the restarting the heart. And I made sure the batteries were completely charged and spare batteries were in them, and I put them in the front part of the container, right, the first item, in a small box with a lid on it. Those 2 obviously were packed in there for a reason. Custom and excise in various countries had a lovely bit of fun. It was to start this defibrillator up and put the diodes together, and bang, big flash, everybody got a laugh. You can never use it again because it was broken. So I put these 2 items in. When it got to Nagarkot in India, it was the first container arrived, and it was being unloaded by the various staff about. The last items in that container were the 2 defibrillators. A guy of a certain age, I think he was close to 60, picked the 2 defibrillators up. They're not that heavy, probably 6 or 7 pounds each. He walked out of the container and fell over, and they didn't realise, or a nurse come over, and he'd had a massive heart attack, and in fact was declared dead. A doctor saw a defibrillator which had fallen out of the box, went over to that defibrillator, pulled it out, switched it on, put the rubber pads on his chest, bang, and that guy's still alive.
Incredible.
Now, countless times that's happened in various different things. We now send to 53 countries in the developing world. Last year, I just want to give you some stats because of what we do. In taking into consideration all our equipment is second-hand and considered as waste, and you would have paid for it to go to landfill, and you would have paid for it to go to specialist waste disposal on your taxes. The equipment we have, we value it at about half the price. And in 2009 we sent £1,261,000 worth of equipment away. In 2010 we sent £2,115,000. And this year, last year, £2,620,000 worth of equipment. That represented a very small investment by our charity. In 2009, 79,000, nearly 80,000. 2010, 173, and 180,500 we've raised in 2011. It's also represented carbon embedded saving going into the atmosphere from waste disposal. 2009, 668 tonnes. 2010, 1,124 tonnes. and 2011, 1,419 tonnes. And this year we've already met that target already. It also meant that in 2009, 14,572 hours of volunteers were given. The next year, 2010, 21,542, and the following year, 18,400. In 1080 district, they decided to use A2 hospitals as their charity for Rotary for a year. Rotary raised £24,500 in that year for A2 hospitals worldwide. And they got sent out to Rotarians and other organisations around the world £566,000 worth of equipment. The average container that we send is around about 60 to 80,000. Last week we sent a container to Rotary Mali, and that was worth £56,000. This going today is a 40-foot container going to the Philippines, and that's £105,600. A2 Hospitals Worldwide is an organisation that does the same as what you do. We care for people, not only in our community, we lend out beds to people that are dying. We also give wheelchairs to the local population as well that need them, disability equipment and things of that nature. A2 Hospitals Worldwide, as far as I'm concerned, is an organisation that is part of Rotary, because we're all in this together. I want to thank you for listening to me. Cause is one thing, but effect is another. One without the other is a bit of a waste of time. So I want to show you a video. I hope it doesn't take you too much, because this is we've got a very bad one which shows you major operations. We've got another one which is not too bad. And they've got this one which is quite calm really. I hope you'll be interested in it. Take into consideration that this hospital was paid for by the Americans, and Big Cure Hospital in Zambia was an idea that came up by a doctor from Norwich, or a mister from Norwich. He was an orthopaedic surgeon, and it was paid for by the Americans. And you can see it's quite a wonderful hospital. The staff are all wearing uniforms that came from the NHS. So there, apart from the hats. We sent just over £1 million worth of equipment to this hospital, and everything you see in it, we supplied. All of it would have been landfill, specialist waste disposal, and you would have paid for it. Alan Norrish is the guy to the right. He's a wonderful guy, a great teacher. What he did on that operation was taught 3 doctors over 3 years to do these operations. There were 2 X-ray machines there, we supplied both of them. And 2 operating theatres as well. Everything that you see there would have been crushed and buried and burnt. There's a little girl had a major burn there and just been treated. recognise the old crutches that we only use once now and throw away. There's a boy that had a brain surgery. This child would have ended up being probably a beggar on the street. Certainly if it was a female, she would not have been able to get married. She'd have been treated in a locality as a pariah. A simple operation brings her back into a situation where she can now get a job. She can be treated as a normal person. Standing back. This guy had been burned over a fire. And the only way he could get around was by, like a crab, walking round. You can see like his operation. I love that face. That's aid to hospitals worldwide, and that's what we do. I asked Alan about 2 years after he'd been in Zambia to come along and see us when he was on holiday in England. I said, how many operations did you do in the first year, Alan? He said, 1,480 operations. How many of those operations were successful? He said, 1,480, even though many of them we had to treat twice and 3 times. How many of those operations, Alan, were taken or used the material of aid to hospitals worldwide? He said, all of them. And how many of those operations would have been done without aid to hospitals? He said, none of them. I don't have to ask that what we do now is the right thing. I don't have to ask that what we're doing is having an impact. Last year we actually helped 12 million people in the developing world with what we sent out. And when we send stuff out, normally it lasts 5 years. That's our guarantee. That's aid to hospitals worldwide, and that's what Rotary is involved with. And I'm very, very blessed to be with you. Thank you.
Any questions, fellows?
Yes. From how many hospitals do you collect equipment?
At the moment, we're considered best practice for the whole of the UK. We actually take 1/5 of the hospital equipment we can.
Do you take it from any of the local hospitals?
We have taken it from Colchester, Brentwood, but not too far this way. We go the other side, most of the major London hospitals.
Would you like to take some from Queen's?
Of course.
You might be able to do so.
Go on the website. We are already qualified to take from the NHS, and we're qualified to take from private hospitals. As I say, we're now considered to be best practice for the whole of the UK. Just imagine what we could do if we were taking the whole amount. And the impact we would have, not only in this country, because we're starting a charity in this country as well, not a charity, but a social enterprise. One of the key issues that I'm dealing with at the moment is people in this country who can't afford the very smallest of disability equipment. We're starting to build a recycle plant now to do just that. That will be separate from aid to hospitals worldwide. But we hope to impact 100,000 people with disability equipment a year, starting in the next 18 months. And we'll be doing it on the basis that if you go to a shop, see the government, what they've done is they've closed the disability centres within the hospitals now. The equipment is issued to you and it's a once and for only situation. If you take it, when you finish with it after 6 weeks or your damaged leg, you'll throw it away in the waste bin, or you'll throw it in the landfill. I want to collect all that stuff and redo it all up. It's good equipment, there's nothing wrong with it. It's got to be tested to a certain standard.
Who pays the shipping charges?
The shipping charges are charged to the person that's getting the equipment. For instance, Rotary Mali last week paid for the equipment in that country. One of the wishes I've really got with Rotary is that we can work with people Rotarians in the countries that we send them to. Most of the countries we're in, we can get the Rotary activated in those countries, working for their own people, and using that as a recruiting platform as well.
What about transport costs in this country from the hospital to you?
We have to raise the funds every year. I was 6'6" when I started this job. And we don't get government funding, and we don't get lottery money.
Do you have to approach the hospital, or do they contact you? They do both.
As in the first instance, we were selling an idea, a concept, and many hospitals are, shall we say, not as pleasant about recycling for reuse. They'd rather stick it in a damn great landfill and get it out of their hair. But we've now started to train people to say, no, the impact of the equipment you're throwing away, not all of it, but some of it, about 60% of it is viable to be used in the developing world, provided we do all the work economic for us.
The talk you gave to us in the film show, do you go around the hospitals and show this to the hospitals as well?
Occasionally. We've got other things we do it on the website as well. It's on the website so everybody, most nurses and clinicians within the doctors and everything else, know what we're doing within the hospitals we're working in.
Talk about the hospitals that you, like the Queen's, you don't sort of go in there. So
yeah, we'll go in there and we'll do a PR exercise and make them part of what we're doing, because there's an awful lot of waste in hospitals. Yes, sir.
Your funding, you said you don't get funding from the government or the lottery. Is that because you haven't asked or you've been declined?
I've been turned down so many times, I feel like I'm part of the horse a year, sir.
You wouldn't qualify on the current
You don't qualify, that's all there is to it. That's all they'll tell you. You don't qualify. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I saw the article about this at first intrigued me about this particular thing, of which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
And from what you said today and with the attention that everybody gave, it was amazing to hear such a thing was in operation. Thank you very much for doing it.
You're welcome, you really are. I'm glad to be part of it myself. Promotion is very difficult.
Have you contacted the BBC?
No.
The BBC do occasionally do documentaries on this type of activity.
Well, the BBC did a programme recently, I think an emergency ward of some kind, where they looked at one guy that was tying himself to some equipment because it was being thrown away. But the BBC don't seem to be interested. Inside Out, I've contacted twice and they don't seem to be interested.
Sorry, can I just, if I may, the district governor for London, 113, Eve, I've forgotten the surname. How extraordinary. She is BBC World Service.
Great.
Useful
Please send me a
information.
name and a telephone number and I'll...
Eve.
Thank you, Mr. President. The biggest problem with the National Health Service is this, that they always put the word safety, health and safety. With the result, they don't provide you the equipment. At the moment now in a local hospital, they are using the disposable equipment, which I can tell you can be reused not once, twice or even 3 times. But still we are not allowed to keep it. We have to dispose it off, throw it in their bins, which are taken away, and God knows where they go. And this is where the problem comes.
Yeah, most of the operational equipment now, i.e. the stainless steel that used to be in, has gone now, and all the sterilisers have gone as well. Now they use a throwaway type equipment pack. They're in blue packs, and you open them up, and let's say you're delivering a baby, you use the peg once, and maybe the cutter once, and that's it. And the rest of that equipment in there's about 34 items. It's thrown in the bin.
I mean, in the past we used to collect wheelchairs. We had a lot of problems with collecting the wheelchairs because they would not give us. They said, no, they have to be destroyed as soon as. I mean, in spite of this, they could be repaired and used. And then when we started collecting them, they said they must not be kept in the country. They have to be kept in a yard. From there, they straight away go to for the shipping. We had a lot of problems. At the moment, I don't think we are collecting any more ships.
150 wheelchairs a month are scrapped in Essex, are cut up into several pieces.
Do you take them?
Yes. By their thousands.
and repair them. We've got prisoners in hospitals doing it. We've got prisoners in hospital, prisoners who are in their normal situation, that they're secure, are actually building bikes for us, specialist bikes for the work we do. We get 600 bikes a year from Centre Parks. They're all mountain bikes, different sizes, but they're mountain bikes. We weld 2 together, and we put a frame on the back of the one on the back. We put a wooden incubator with a plastic top on there, 2 bottles either side, and that keeps a baby alive if it's been born in difficulties in the village. And the mother can get on the back as well if she has difficulties. There's so many things. We're building little golf carts with 25-litre containers on the back for water, so that kids don't damage their spine when they go into water holes. There are so many things that we do that laterally thinking is what it's about. We look at the situation in the village, we look at the hospital and what their requirements are, and they tell us what we want, what they want. We don't tell them. The orders are what they ask for and what they've been trained on.
Thank you very much. Right, could I ask Ray, you can get a rating of thanks, please.
Yes, Mr. President, fellows and guests. Over the years we've heard a number of speakers talking of similar frustration, aggravation and problems. By far, yours were the worst we've heard about. When you go out the other end and what you've achieved is quite simply phenomenal. It's far better, I think, than anything we've seen before here, under the circumstances where it was one man against the establishment, for want of better, and you got there. And I'd like our fellows to show appreciation in our usual manner.
Thank you very much, Ray. Right, reminders first, or any other business first? Oh,
I'll call all the tab hours.